I have with me somebody, it's her second radio interview of the day. We're just, also Rands. She happens to have the same last name as me because she's my wife, Katie Gorka, who runs the Civil Society and American Dialogue Project at the Heritage Foundation's Feulner
Institute.
Follow her right now, Gorka Katie. And you're here because of this incredible document that the White House released just yesterday, the 1776 report. Let's post it on our Twitter feeds, our Facebook page. Why is this important? What is this in terms of Donald Trump's 4 years in office?
Well, going back to what you just said, this underscores that the Constitution is for all Americans. It's not just for part of the country, and that's what this document affirms. So what he did was this came out of the growing concern over the deplorable state of our civics education, of our universities, and he pulled together a panel of just great historians and great thinkers to talk about what do we need to do? What does America represent? And what do we need to do to save it? And that's the report that came out last night.
And this committee, I think great names like Larry Schweiker are on this 1776 committee. This was a response to the project that came out of the New York Times in part, and the 1619
The 1619
project.
Yeah, but it's more than that. I mean, it's a response to all the terrible content that's out there that's being taught in our schools and universities, starting with Howard Zinn up to the 1619 project, including critical race theory and everything else.
So where does this rank in terms of, we could spend hours, and we will talk about this tomorrow during the inauguration, the fight against ISIS, building the wall, rebuilding the economy. You said something quite stunning before we came on air about how you see this and its ranking on the list of the president's achievements. How important is the 1776 report and the commission he created?
So I think the report is incredibly important, and I think it will have a long shelf life. I don't know what's going to happen to the commission. They're saying it's going to last for 2 years. Biden would have to actively disband it. I'd love to see that. Biden disbands the 1776 commission. Can you get any more anti-American? But I think the report itself is super important because we all know that the enemy now is inside of our borders. We're not talking about fighting ISIS abroad or communists abroad. It's here at home. And what really hasn't happened up till now, there really has not been a clear articulation of who that enemy is. We talk about the left or the radical left, or we talk about critical race theory. What this report does that I think is so important is it draws the line of continuity from those who advocated for slavery and tried to dispense with the idea of that all men are created equal. And they did so by arguing for group rights.
Wow.
Right?
The collective.
The collective. And that's what the progressives did. And that's what today's left is doing.
So this publication, or the work that the commission is doing, is tracing a line all the way from those who were pro-slavery all the way through the new left and to the critical race theory today?
Absolutely. That's what it does. And I think that's so important. When you talk about how do you develop a strategy to fight an enemy, the first thing you have to do is define your enemy. Now, from history, many people will be familiar with George Kennan's long telegram. That was so important because it helped us understand the Russians and why they were an enemy to the United States. And that's, I think, what this document does. I think it helps us understand that the new left is totally incompatible with American constitutionalism.
For those who aren't familiar, this is a case study that I used for years when I was teaching the military, where I looked at a successful instance of how we dealt with the threat. And the best we've ever done as a nation is the long telegram 1946, which was George Kennan's explication of why the Soviet Union is an existential threat. So that the why of who the enemy is, which led to Paul Nitzer's NSC 68, which was the secret plan to defeat the Soviet Union Union, which eventually we did under Reagan. So talk to us about the broader role of all Americans. We're in D.C., we're reading documents coming out of the White House, talking on a radio show. You're at the Heritage Foundation, the mothership of the conservative movement. If you're not a member, why not? It is a crucial organization, heritage.org. Join today. Tell us about this concept of civil society, American dialogue. Those millions who are listening live right now or catching this on a podcast, what does this mean to them, Katie? And what role could they have to bring us back to where we should be?
I think two really key areas, the culture and education. And that's what the report focuses on as well. It is critical that we get our education back on track. No more turning our kids over to schools and just trusting that they're going to be taught the right thing. And honestly, parents, no more writing checks for $60,000 or incurring massive debt to send your kids to colleges to be indoctrinated into the left. Americans have got to stand up to this and turn this around.
We just had a caller in the last segment who received an email on the PTA list to call all the parents into school for a lecture on racism and, white privilege. And she wants to respond to everybody in the email and fight back, but she's afraid. What would you say to that caller and her predicament as she sees her children being indoctrinated?
I think it's a huge dilemma. I know a lot of parents face this. I know a lot of teachers face this. You can go head on, but I'm not sure that's the best way to do this. I actually, before coming down here, I just sat in on a great hour-long talk on how we can do a better job of winning the culture. And part of it is tell stories.
Yes.
Find the sympathetic story and win over your audience that way. I think it's going to be more effective to go in and win people over, get them to listen to you. Don't go in necessarily with the red meat content because people will just shut down on that.
Because we established a family, our children grew up in a post-communist nation. We've seen what these policies do to a community. A lot of Americans who haven't had your experience have already given up. Every night I get the DMs, the texts, the emails. It's over. They despair. What would you say to those Americans who looked at the possibility of another 4 years of Donald Trump and now they've already given up?
Well, I'm going to go back to something I learned from you, and this was back in the Obama days. You believed in Americans, and you believed that America would rise again, and it did. And I believe in the 75 million or however many voted for Trump. We've all learned a lot. We love our country. We've been woken up from our slumber. We realize that we cannot take our freedom for granted. And I have faith in that. I'm actually optimistic. I'm optimistic.
And then this idea that some have posited that you just go away into the wilderness and you create your own little isolated community, that's wrong, isn't it? We have to, more than ever, be part of the community and change it back to what it was.
100%. And the way I look at it is I think about children. I think about how terribly sad it is to think of children being indoctrinated into dysfunctional leftist thinking. And what I do, I will do because I don't want children to be subjected to that. I want them to know the beauty of our freedoms, the ideas of this country. And so I will keep fighting, and I hope everybody else will too.
I'll be there right next to you. She's Katie Gorka of the Heritage Foundation's Feulner Institute. Follow her right now. Gorka Katie on Twitter. Join the Heritage Foundation today. It truly is the bedrock of the values that we celebrate in this nation as an institution. Heritage.org.
Thanks for watching the Heritage Foundation's YouTube channel. With more than 500,000 members, we are the nation's largest conservative research and education institution. We believe the principles and ideas of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing. Please help us further our mission by subscribing to this channel and sharing our videos with your family and friends.